Okay, we've had the good, we've had the bad, now it's time for the ugly. What is the ugly, you ask? Well, it's essentially a Jackson Pollock of everything that doesn't quite have its own video. But why is it called the ugly? Well, as I said before, we've had the good, we've had the bad, so calling this one the ugly ties them all together with a clever reference to that classic Clint Eastwood film, Any Which Way But Loose. This is part 49 of Overthinking Donkey Kong Country 2. Not my best joke, but I got sick of working on it, so let's keep going. I'm gonna start with what has to be the most recent bit of Donkey Kong Country 2 news, and in all likelihood, the first bit of DKC2 news in a very long time. A new code was, somehow, discovered after almost 30 years, allowing players to bail out of a level from the pause screen, even if they haven't finished it. Normally, you'd just press select, but if you haven't beaten the level, you could also press up and B together, followed by down and X, left and A, then right and Y. Just hammer that pattern over and over, and you'll hear the character swapping sound as the screen fades to black, taking you to the overworld. I have tried this myself, and it does work. In fact, I used the absolute fuck out of it while recording gameplay for this series. I dare say it's going to be a part of every DKC2 player's experience going forward. Each Kong has an unused animation that shows them doing a sort of walk of shame. It's my guess that they were made for failing bonus areas, and would have been this game's answer to these animations. Backing up that assumption is their place in the game's code, right next to the Kong's victory animations. Unfortunately, there isn't much else in the game's code that didn't make it into the game itself. There's some alternate colors for some enemies, but we went through that in the last episode already, and there is a handful of other things, from musical cues to debug rooms, but honestly, none of it's really worth talking about. If you'd like to see it for yourself, DKC2's page on the cutting room floor will be linked in the description. Something I really dig about the commercials for DKC2 is how we get a glimpse of a version of the game that's a little rougher around the edges, a little different. I won't go over all the commercials and promo material here. If that's something you want to do yourself, then YouTube's got just about everything you could want, and I'll link a pretty comprehensive compilation in the description. Instead, I just want to go over some of the highlights. The American commercials? I don't know. To me, they feel a bit like sales pitches. Is that just what ads were like in the US back in the 90s? Over here, they were always much more to the point. Or maybe not. At least these commercials put the game front and center, with most of the runtime being dedicated to gameplay footage. It's these commercials that give us the best look into the pre-release build of DKC2. We see an alternate title card, complete with chest opening animation. We also see the original Deep Blue Sky of Top Sail Trouble, and an altered version of the second Crow fight. But I feel like the Japanese commercials really take the cake here. The Japanese commercials are much higher budget, complete with 2D and 3D animations. I'm older now, and I don't get too excited about anything these days. But watching this, particularly the one on the pirate ship, I know exactly how I'd feel seeing this on TV as a 5-year-old kid. Then there's this. Yeah, I know that's more an advertisement for the console itself, but still. Also, we got the briefest of glimpses just then of what Nintendo was showcasing as its best new releases, and it was so fucking impressive. DKC2, Yoshi's Island, Killer Instinct, and that's just a fraction of the bangers that came out in '95. There's also this short promo video for DKC2, in a similar but not too similar vein to the promo video for DKC. Not much to say about it, but it's a great snapshot into what stuff was like back in the 90s. Everything from the camera work and transitions to the costumes and premise is also 90s. I want to take a minute to talk about the making of Donkey Kong Country 2. As a story, it's not as interesting as, say, the creation of Mortal Kombat, but it's a cool insight into the challenges and advantages of designing a sequel. DKC walked so the DKC2 could run. It's not a stretch to say that's often the case with sequels. Much of DKC's development time was dedicated to developing the engine and figuring out the studio's workflow. And when combined with the trial and error DKC went through to dial in that game's focus, DKC2 started development on the strongest of foundations, which is good because it had its work cut out for it. Donkey Kong Country 2 had a few goals it needed to achieve. It had to go bigger, as all sequels tend to do. It had to address feedback and criticism of the first game, and it had the problem of having to come up with all new level themes, now that DKC had used up all the standard biomes. And that's where the general pirate theme came from. It shouldn't come as a surprise, to some of you at least, that Greg Mayles is responsible for DKC2's nautical leanings. He's well known as a sucker for all things pirates, and Donkey Kong Country 2 was where he first got to share this passion with the world. While the pirate-themed levels spread to the general design of the Kremlin crew, that same lack of traditional level ideas meant that we got swamps, roller coasters, brambles, hives, and haunted forests. I'd put forth that the lava theme is about as traditional as it gets, and was likely at least in conversation during DKC's development, but it's not hard to see that it wouldn't have been a good fit. You could extend that to the castle theme, as well as the glacier levels. I can't say for sure if they were knocked around during DKC, but it wouldn't surprise me, as they're pretty standard themes, and the latter isn't too dissimilar from the Crystal Cave or Snow levels. And similarly, the mineshaft and jungle ideas return, heavily reworked, and with vibes all their own. Speaking of the jungle levels, apparently the Lost World was brought in as a way to stretch the game's runtime out. I don't know how I feel about that, but it all worked out in the end, I guess. The game largely differentiated itself from its predecessor by shifting the focus from momentum to exploration. When you look at that, and factor in the increased number of collectibles included due to feedback that there weren't enough in the first game, I'd say that DKC2 was plenty long already. Something that contradicts that story a bit is the fact that there's quite a bit of cut content for DKC2. That might be a poor choice of words, because not a lot was created for DKC2 that didn't make it in, but a lot more was planned. Most noticeably, the entire 7th world, the Flying Croc. We've discussed it before, but the Flying Croc was planned to be a full world of at least 5 levels and a boss. We got 1 level and a boss. A sky level theme was floated, no pun intended, but whether that meant walking on clouds like in Donkey Kong Land, or levels taking place on an airship like in Donkey Kong Land, we'll never know. We do know that Stickerbush Symphony was slated to be the music for the sky levels at one point. It was also slated to be for the water levels, which makes sense, but when a suitable water theme didn't make it into the game, the track was slapped onto the Bramble theme and the rest is history. Anyways, information on the making of DKC2 is scarce, but it's fair to say it went along relatively smoothly. As smooth as game development can ever be, I guess. Donkey Kong Country 2 released on the 21st of November, 1995, to the criticalist of acclaims. Actually, that's a slight exaggeration. It copped a lot of 8 out of 10s, which is still respectable, and was outshone by Yoshi's Island, which released earlier that same year. Still, it sold so much that suppliers couldn't keep up with the demand, and was overall one of the highest selling games on the Super Nintendo. Well, I guess now's as good a time as any to talk glitches. I haven't experienced any myself, but there's a decent amount of them in Donkey Kong Country 2, many of which you can try yourself. That said, some of them will absolutely fuck up your save file, so maybe just watch this video instead. One of the most notorious glitches is the Castle Crush glitch. This one's one of the most well documented and easiest to replicate, but I don't want to go over the steps here because I don't want to be responsible, even partially, for wrecking someone's save file, and potentially original Super Nintendo cartridge. It's also one of the most unpredictable, for lack of a better word, and while some sprite changes seem to be more common than others, it looks like almost anyone or anything can show up in the Castle Crush glitch. This one's easy, and a low risk glitch to boot. In Hotad Hop, take Squidder to the no animal sign, but don't go past it. Dismount as close to the sign as you can, then hit the end of level target hard enough to trigger the musical cue animation thingy. The Kong's instrument will turn gold, because Squidder's color palette will still be loaded up, and I'm assuming the instrument's color palettes would take up the same space or something. This happens in the Castle Crush glitch too, sort of, as well as some glitches in the original DKC. Whatever, it's cool. A similar thing can happen to Diddy, where he takes on Ratley's colors in Topsail Trouble. Take Ratley up to the platform near the Cruncher, team up, jump on Cruncher, throwing Dixie up into the air right before impact. While Dixie's still in the air, Diddy will rebound off Cruncher's muscular pecs and onto Ratley, where he will take his color palette. Apparently he's unable to touch enemies after the no animal sign too, but whether that means he phases right through them or they kill him, you know, like normal, I can't say. Another easy glitch is the Rickety Race glitch. Stay in last place for the entire race, and right as the 10th place flag appears on screen, take out the Clank in 9th place. The game will go bananas. I'm not going to pretend I understand code all that well, but I feel like I can kind of understand the reason why this glitch happens. See, after the end flag appears on screen, it's not supposed to update. That final flag is your final place in the race. So when you jump on the Clank in front of you, you're changing that placement. But this only applies to the first digit of the placement, and 10th place is a 2-digit ranking, so, and I'm literally quoting the Mario wiki here, the game jumps to arbitrary pointers, switching the second digit, which causes the game to read garbage data. Apparently this one could fuck with your game, so while it's easy to replicate, maybe just don't? I don't know, I'm not your dad. I kinda wish I knew about this glitch while recording for this series, because it would have come in handy. The Screechs Sprint glitch enables you to play through the race in the second half at your own pace, as if done correctly, Screech will just hang out at the starting line indefinitely. It's relatively simple too. as Squawks, hit the brambles right behind Screech. Then when Squawks starts flashing, head past Screech and onto the rest of the level. And if it worked, Screech won't join you. There are more than a couple glitches involving Klobber, but I'm just going to talk about 3 that I found kinda cool. The first is the long respawn glitch. I'm struggling to verify this one, but if you jump on a Klobber, then place the barrel he's in close to a ledge, close enough for him to fall in. Apparently he'll eventually respawn by falling from the sky. While it sounds a bit dodgy to me, I'm including it because it sounds cool too. Next up is one called the cheating death glitch. This one's probably the coolest. Go into team up mode, let a Klobber knock you into the pit while the second Kong is in midair. The second Kong will land, saving the first Kong, though the Kongs will still lose a life and the ending jingle thing will play. Finally, there's a glitch at the end of Lava Lagoon where, if you knock out the Klobber, place it near the end of level target, go into team up mode, and when the Klobber comes to and attacks, the player throws the second Kong into the air, the Klobber should knock the first Kong onto the target, triggering the ending sequence but leaving both Kongs on screen, essentially breaking the level. Not exactly a glitch, but it's cool. There are more glitches, but some are Game Boy Advance specific, and some are hard to pull off, verify, or just otherwise sound like a load of horse manure. There's a list on the Mario Wiki if you want to take a look for yourself, and I'll put it down in the description. The bosses got their own episodes, but I did it last time, so let's rank the bosses real quick. 8. Stronghold Showdown. Literally nothing happens. Worst fight. Next. 7. King Zing. Great fight, lackluster boss design. It's made better by King Zing's surprise appearance in Rambi Rumble, but we're not talking about that right now. 6. Cleaver. Decent boss fight, decent boss design, at least it's something different. 5. Crow. Seems a bit basic on paper, but this fight represents both the stylistic departure and the increase in scope of DKC2, and it's a solid fight on its own merits. 4. Cudgel. Cudgel's a palette swap and a dumping ground of unused assets, but I like him a lot and it's my list, so 4th best. 3. The second Krool fight. The final Krool fight is very weird, but it's a fun challenge in a beautifully realized temple and a great way to finish the game. 2. Creepy Crow. It's challenging, and it manages to pay homage to the original fight while having an identity all its own, and the story implications are just too cool to ignore. First place, the first Krool fight. That first Krool fight might be my favorite boss battle in the entire series. I don't know. The cockpit of the Flying Croc looks awesome though, and the fight is super fun. A massive step up from the final fight of DKC. Done. Fuck him. There's also another boss exclusive to the Game Boy Advance remake named Kerosene. He appears during Stronghold Showdown. He's fine, I guess. Doesn't feel like he belongs there if I'm being honest. Also, I just realized all the bosses start with a K. At some point during development, these absolute monstrosities were considered. They were called banana animals and basically served as moving banana bunches, though they might have been worth a bit more, depending on their speed or how difficult it was to acquire them. Each banana animal had a different movement pattern. The banana birds would fly, the banana fish would swim, the banana kangaroos would jump, and so on. The gameplay concept was recycled or otherwise parallels the flying bananas in the Retro Studios games. And as we all know, the idea of banana birds made it into DKC3. I tolerate the banana birds, but only just. I'm glad this idea didn't make it into DKC2 because it's fucking gross. So there's this render that, as far as I can tell, is official. It's of a golden Squawks statue. I can't find any info on it anywhere, and in fact, only came across the render by chance. For an embarrassingly long time, I was left without a clue as to what it could have been for, but the answer is obvious. Remember the golden animal tokens from DKC? Maybe once upon a time, they were going to be in DKC2 as well. How cool would that have been? I wonder what level themes each animal would have gotten. I feel like Ratley would get the rigging, Squawks would get brambles or mines, hopefully with the damage removed for the former. On Guard would get the ship's hold because, of course, or maybe the glacier, and like last time, there'd be a bunch of fake walls. Squidder would probably have brambles or hive, and Rambi, I feel, might have had the castle. It would have been cool to see the giant gold statues of the new buddies too. Like DKC, DKC2 had a couple of comic book tie-ins released for it. Both of them were only released in Germany, which for some reason was a thing that happened a lot in the 90s with rareware game comics. But luckily, we've got translations. And before I forget, thank you so much to those legends who did the scanning and translating. I'll put a link to them in the description. The first comic is called Bum Bada Bum im Urwald, which apparently means boom bada boom in the jungle. And while marketed as an adaptation of DK64, was clearly based on Donkey Kong Country 2. I can't find more than the first page at the moment, but from what I can tell, it looks very similar to the Banana Day 24 comic for DKC. I'm kinda bummed I don't have more for you here. At any rate, there's another Germany exclusive DKC2 comic, and this one just straight up adapts the story of the game. It's so weird. Here and there, they just put in screenshots and renders from the actual game and break the fourth wall. But I can't get too down on it. This game is overflowing with awesome visual ideas and concepts, and they had the unenviable task of trying to condense it all into as little space as possible, while keeping a consistent narrative throughout. All things considered, they did a pretty good job. A lot of the characters and levels, even minor ones, get their day in the sun, and Diddy and Dixie have a lot of personality. They're both plucky and kinda sassy, for lack of a better word, but there's a caring side to them, along with a childlike optimism that balances it out. It's not an easy task having to extrapolate a personality from silent protagonists, as well as have it fit what little established personality they do have, but the writers here could have done much worse. Also, I can't find any info on this at all, but I swear on my mother's life that I'm telling the truth. When DKC2 was first released, there were promo tie-ins with like cereal companies, where on the inside of the cereal boxes, they'd have a comic strip showing a scene from the game. The only one I can remember had Cato Ninetails talking to Kremlings on the Gangplank Galleon, but I think there were like 4 to 6 in total. And I think there was even a prize for anyone who could get them all and mail them off to whatever address. If anyone knows what I'm talking about, please tell me, because I am definitely losing sleep over this. I had one note for this section. 2 words. Jesus Christ. I think that's mostly based on this, the only artwork from the cancelled port that we have to work with. And from what I can tell, it's not even from the official build. Apparently, during development of Donkey Kong Land, a 2-man team was put together, with the goal being to see if the Virtual Boy was up to the task of handling the next DKC. It was not. Graphics guy Stephen Hurst was brought in to help an as-yet unnamed programmer and project lead with the job. It used recycled assets from Donkey Kong Land, and apparently the 3D effect worked really well, but was too taxing on the hardware for it to be viable. That, combined with the fact that Virtual Boy sold like literal arse, spelled the end of the project. And I suppose that's as good a note to end on as any, right? And with that, we're done with the good, the bad, and the ugly. Despite how difficult these last 2 episodes were, I'm really happy with how this one turned out, and there's some decent conversation pieces in there too. From here on out, it's recap episodes, then the final fight. I know it's taken us a ways to get here, but I really do appreciate you all for sticking with me. Let's end Donkey Kong December with a bang. Just pretend it's still December.